up, RotoGrinders? Dean here. That's Dean 7904 if you want to get all technical on me. It is 3 o'clock on the East Coast, 2 o'clock. Oh, no, it's 2 o'clock Central. Noon on the West Coast, which of course means it's time for Yahoo DFS Live presented by RotoGrinders. Once again, I know it's the season-long, finals as far as, if you're in your season-long deal. Of course, we talk daily here. The season-long guys over at Yahoo, we talk daily with the RotoGrinders daily fantasy guys. We're bringing in one of the finalists over here from Yahoo. We'll talk about what somebody you probably recognize here from RotoGrinders as well in just a second. But Dalton Del Don representing for the Yahoo side. Dalton, I know you're probably in like your season-long, finals mode, but we have to talk DFS as well. Welcome to the show. Happy holidays, everybody out there as well, by the way. And also, tell me about, let's see, you're in a couple leagues, so I'm assuming you have some kind of final set up, right?
Yeah, thanks for having me as always. You're right, Week 16 is the most important league in season long, and everyone's fired up for sure. But unfortunately, there are a lot of people out of their playoffs, which is the perfect time to jump into DFS if you're not used to it. So this is what it's made for, is if you're a big season long guy and you're out of your league that you care the most about, now is the time to jump in. And there'll be some craziness the final 2 weeks anyway. It'll be especially fun next week trying to decide who's gonna play and all that. But we have one more week left with a full slate that it should be as close to normal as possible.
Yeah, and you said you had a couple of sweats yourself as far as your home league or like your official league and all that kind of stuff. I wish you good luck this week. Obviously, myself, we were talking about it before the show. Brett, we'll bring in just a second. You're asking about like teams that might have Ezekiel Elliott's coming back and playing in the finals. Well, why one season-long team, which I'm sure people really care about, Brett. People love hearing these kind of stories. I had David Johnson. I traded up for the number one pick, Ezekiel Elliott, and Kareem Hunt. And I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to win this thing. And I didn't. Ezekiel Elliott's going to be just – I got knocked out last week, and Todd Gurley just pummeled me, basically.
Oh. But, it would have been awesome to get to the Super Bowl with Zeke, though, man. That would have been that's one that you could write home about and brag to everybody that you know that, hey, I had the number one overall pick and I got David Johnson and I still won my league. That would be something.
Yeah, I traded like the number 4 and number 5 pick overall in my third round pick for the first pick overall. And I took David Johnson over Le'Veon Bell because whatever, I'm a fish, I suppose. But results oriented. If you guys don't know who that is, that's Brett Hartfield. He's filling in today. We much appreciate it. He goes by Killer B throughout the industry. Of course, if you guys have RotoGrinders Premium, you see him all over the place on these videos. Brett, welcome to the show. And you play on Yahoo plenty, correct?
Yes. Yeah. It's I try to dabble in every site that has the just the salary cap formations of DFS. So yeah, I get a lot of exposure over on Yahoo. And in fact, Yahoo really saved me last week. Yahoo, the nice part about Yahoo is they include the Sunday night football game, the Monday night football game. And I had plenty of exposure to Jameis and Mike Evans and then brought it back with Devontae Freeman last week in my main cash and my main tournaments. So that really brought me back to even. So thank you, Yahoo.
You say that, by the way, and this is the 1 week where that's not true because I assume because of Christmas, I suppose.
Yeah, they got the
main
2
slate.
game. Yeah.
The main slate is 12 games, but so there's no Le'Veon Bell to be had, unfortunately. BT's like the cheat code, I suppose. If you're playing on a slate, I'm sure there's slates available that have all 16 games, I would imagine. So in the lobby, of course, their main slate, with their baller, the 50K prize pool, 5K if you bank at $10, jump in there. That tournament is a 12-game slate. You mentioned last week. We always talk about last week briefly. Of course, we're going to dive in and talk Week 16 in just a second, Brett. But you got some gloating to do, Dalton. You banked. You won our tournament last week. To break down your team for us.
Yeah, I did. I bunched up Mark Ingram and Le'Veon Bell, speaking of, and Kenyon Drake. Those guys hit. Went with my guy Jimmy G to Garrett Selleck. But I'm surprised that I did win the whole group because my receivers were total busts. Devin Funchess, loved his setup there. And Des Bryant and Deshaun Jackson. They all 3 of them combined for barely 10 points. So I am surprised I still pulled away thanks to the productive backfield.
Yeah, I mentioned before the show, we kind of talked about it. I said I made a donkey move at the 12 when it was 12:30 late swaps, and I don't know, Brett. You tell me because you asked me the question, and I don't know. Was it results oriented or not? So I got off the Bird. The Bird had 2 touchdowns. He was the 10K wide receiver. I got off him for Brett. Who do you know? Who's the guy that all of a sudden became interesting to me? Noon or once I saw late scratches. When I saw Teddy Ginn was out, Brett, I went to Willie Snead, and
got bit by the Snead, huh?
Yeah. Never go full Snead. Full Snead.
So the problem that I had, and this was even on Yahoo, once I got knowledge that Fournette was ruled out, I went to Chris Ivory. And then and then got off of Marquise Goodwin, basically my only good wide receiver play throughout the whole week. Like Dalton said, there weren't a lot of good wide receivers out there. It was very hit or miss. A lot of guys like Bird that you've never heard of having 2 touchdowns last week. But, yeah, I mean, I ended up spending up – this was more across the industry, but ended up spending up for Antonio Brown in lineups. We haven't seen Pittsburgh on a main slate in a long time, so I was loving my exposure to Antonio Brown, but that kind of bit me.
It's like an expansion team. Who are these Steelers? I never heard of them. I just played DFS. And so you didn't pivot to top. You had no Tommy Bohannon?
Couldn't get on him.
Dalton was like one guy. Is there one guy touting on Twitter? Like we called Bohannon. I didn't know he existed.
Yeah, there was another rushing touchdown too, right? They had 3 rushing touchdowns, and neither were Yeldon or Ivory. And of course, I actually had a couple lineups. I actually was on Keelan Cole, believe it or not. That was surprisingly, but one of the few things that did go right. But yeah, I think he finished with the most fantasy points among all wide receivers last week. Is that right? Just a crazy ending to an otherwise crazy fantasy season.
He certainly could have, and I guess we'll be enough rehashing of last week. But speaking on terrible receivers. Like I had a ton of Funches, I had a ton of Josh Gordon, I had some Thielen. It did not work out well for myself. But hey, and I like you, Brett. I managed to salvage just because I think everybody of course those guys were all heavily owned, especially Antonio Brown. So I did salvage in other spots. Thankfully, it wasn't a complete disaster. But this is where we talk about. This is a spot where is he worth it? The guys we're willing to spend up on. Dalton, who do you want to spend up on? We already touched on this guy's name now. Let's elaborate. What are your thoughts as far as Ezekiel Elliott? He's back.
Yeah, $30 here. I'm totally paying up. I mean, I guess there's some concern with conditioning, but this guy ranks as a top 10 fantasy back this year. Still overall, after missing 6 games, I think he's number 2 on a per game basis. We saw Seattle get gashed by the run last week. Dallas, obviously, both these teams' seasons on the line, but at home, total workhorse. I expect him to immediately go back to being a workhorse. $30 just seemed kind of like a bargain there. So I absolutely think that the price there, definitely worth paying up for.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the conditioning at all. Like, this wasn't an injury or anything. And then the reports are that he's been working out the whole time. And like you said, it feels like a discount. Gurley's certainly in play, and I'm sure we'll talk about him at some point as well. But, a nice discount off Gurley. $30 seems a little bit too cheap. And I don't see any reason why he wouldn't get 30 touches right away. Dallas and Seattle, they're both playing for potential, the chances are slim, but they both, feel like they have a shot at a playoff right now. Brett, touch on Elliott at $30, and then let's talk about how it affects Dak, and then of course their left tackle currently is not practicing either. How does that affect them?
Yeah, I'd like to see an updated photo on what Ezekiel Elliott's physique looks like. Like, is this Ohio State cut, like, the belly shirt, Zeke? Are we getting that, or are we getting still kind of like a little bit of the thicker Zeke? But no, totally agree. He's going to be angry. I believe it was a 6-game suspension. So like you said, he's healthy. They're going to feed him. I don't care what you hear in the press. This is going to be their offense this week. They're going to feed the guy. And, the nice part about Zeke is he's really become a wide receiver this year. So, he's going to get targets. He's going to get touches all over the field. So, yeah, I really like him. And, Seattle, like, man, they got blitzkrieged by the Rams. I mean, in Seattle, which we never see. So them on the road, this is a spot where we always attack Seattle's defense on the road. They're hurt. So yeah, this is a spot where Dallas is going to put up some points. So
there is a photo actually out there circulating. Ooh, let me confirm. Zeke looks shredded.
Yeah, he's got that more aerodynamic physique looking. All right, that's good.
Supposedly.
And also there's infighting there in Seattle as far as their defense. They feel, and of course they dealt with a fair amount of injuries as well. It's like, it feels like more of a name brand, right, Dalton, as far as Seattle? Like, we're not running away from this. Like, I don't want to pick on Seattle defense. Like, that's not a thing.
I mean, maybe they overcompensate for how bad they were against the run last week. I would kind of, I guess, be somewhat concerned that, but still, just the setup here for Zeke at that price, it'd be hard for me not to load up with exposure with him.
All right, Brett, tell us the player that you want to pay up for this week.
So no, this is I guess the way I looked at this is he worth it? Rob Gronkowski. So I think in DFS this week, you really have to make a decision at tight end. It doesn't matter what site you're playing on Yahoo, he's $30. The big decision is, do you pay up for him or do you go cheap with like a Gates or Brait? Personally, I don't think Rob Gronkowski is worth the $30 price tag this week. I'd rather pay down and then pay up for studs like Dalton said with Zeke. I'd rather pay up at running back this week. I'm not finding too good of value at running back, so I don't think Gronk's worth it this week to pay up. Last week he definitely paid off that price tag, but yeah, this week I'm off the Gronk.
We know he's from Buffalo and he smashes in Buffalo. I don't know when the Mafia is not there. I know he smashed him in New England as well. It's funny. You mentioned like it's Gronk or it's spent all the way down, and we'll talk about the cheap. We're going to elaborate on those guys later in the show. But I think we also have to bring Kelsey into the conversation. Just $2 cheaper at $28. I think that's the decision kind of pay all the way up or spend on Gronk or Kelsey or spend all the way down and talk about. Well, we'll talk about Gates. We'll talk about Brayton, guys of those sorts. Is Gronk completely separated himself from Kelsey? The $2 difference, does that mean anything for him? Because Kelsey, should smash versus Miami as well. So say you did decide you're going to spend all the way up. Is it clear-cut Gronk or a conversation?
Yeah. So one thing that I deep dived in actually was KC's offense. So since the new offensive coordinator took over, it's been really Kareem Hunt's show. And I found that Kareem Hunt and Kelsey have been super negatively correlated on the year. So when one goes off, the other usually isn't much of a factor. So I feel like this is the Kareem Hunt show. It is cold. We're out in Kansas City, Arrowhead. I'd rather buy Kareem Hunt over Kelsey right now.
I was looking at some contract incentive bonus for Gronkowski. If he gets 80 catches, it's like one of like three things. If he's voted like the top tight end by the AP, which probably I guess he will be. I don't know. We'll see. If he gets 80 receptions or 1,200 yards, I think he gets $5.5 million.
This is what the RG premium subscribers want right here. I mean, that's a deep dive right there. Looking at salary incentives. That's what we like. Yeah.
I think he's 14. He's 16. So in 2 games, he needs 16. So to lock him in, guaranteed 80 receptions. Or he's a little less than 200 yards from 1,200 total yards, which would, again, bink that the $5.5 million. Or, wouldn't he just be voted by the AP as top tight end? I assume so. Dalton, comment on this as far as your thoughts as far as Gronk and compare him to Kelsey for spending all the way up. Where are you at as far as Gronkowski?
That's a great point about the correlation between Hunt and Kelsey. I didn't realize it was that stark, but it makes sense. And I'm all in on Hunt again this week. I expect more of the same. Love that matchup there. Yeah, Gronk, I'm in general all for paying down on tight end this week, but Gronk has like the double narrative streak. Not only, I believe he's from Buffalo and he's just totally crushed them throughout his career, but also there's the whole revenge factor, right? I mean, he got suspended for that shot against them. So people are actually worried about him going over the middle in this game. But yeah, I mean, he's awesome. He and Kelsey in a league of their own, of course, but I'm probably going to go. I really like Brait at $11 or Garrett Sellett, guys like that this week.
Yeah, I mean, is that a concern, by the way? I mean, is that a legit concern? Like somebody's going to try to take out Gronk? Like, is there
I wouldn't let that affect my decision personally, no. But
who was that coach years ago that paid out his players for certain hits? Was that was the Hurricanes? The Saints.
Well, I was at that game. Yes,
Brett Favre's ankle. Yeah,
I was at the Niner game. The Saints did that. Yeah, kill the head and the body will die or something. I believe Greg Williams, a defensive coach, said, and they went after Alex Smith, and then that punt returner they concussed Kyle Williams, and he fumbled in the NFC Championship game twice next week.
And I'm also combining stories because I think Luther Campbell would pay Hurricanes players for rough hits back in the 80s as well, too. If you guys remember this, when the Hurricanes are back, I suppose. My guy, as far as, I say, is he worth it? This guy just seems way too cheap. It's, Michael Thomas at $29. That just seems way too cheap. The guy, he's ridiculously consistent, probably the most consistent receiver on the slate. Touchdown variance is finally in his favor. He scored a touchdown in three straight weeks. He probably could have had 3 touchdowns last week if a couple wonky things worked against him. And also red zone targets, 9 red zone targets the last 3 weeks. We know Brett Favre. I was going to say Green Bay's on my mind. Drew Brees. Brett Favre's not going to throw for any touchdowns. Brees is not had to air it out so much this year, but Thomas is clearly his guy. The game against Atlanta should shoot out. They're projected for 29 points. And Brett, you're the guy. You shop around the industry. You like to buy guys low, sell them high, fade them high. This seems too cheap on Thomas, right?
Yeah. I mean, basically across the industry on the main slate, you would have Keenan Allen and Michael Thomas near the top of every site. And here you have quite the misprice for Michael Thomas at $29. So like you said, he's got a super high floor. I think the only real concern that he's ever had playing offense this year is the pass to run ratio that the Saints have run. I mean, last year we were looking at clearly over a 60-40 pass to run ratio, and this year it's almost 50-50 just with how strong these two backs are. So Michael Thomas, I mean, this game happened just 2 weeks ago. So Thomas got fed there. He had 14 targets, 10 catches with the touch. So love Thomas for this price. Should be better at home in the Superdome, where we know they always crush his offense.
Yeah, Dalton, Brett references like the price, as far as compared to other people. So Thomas is $29, Keenan Allen $39, Julio $35, Tyreek $32, Jarvis Landry is $1 more than. I mean, I can't talk to that. So just like if I were to ask you like name your favorite receiver, price isn't an issue. Like it might be Michael Thomas, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He's right there with Julio and Keenan Allen. The price is, given his price, he's a no-brainer because I just put him in the same tier with those. That game is the highest over/under of the week. He scored a touchdown in each of the past 3 games. And last week, I had him going. So let me tell you, he had 2 other touchdowns back on review, and calls were very, very close. So he nearly had a 3-score day. So the targets are there. So really hard to come up with a counter here. I totally agree with you.
So now we talk about guys that we're willing to fade, we're willing to pass on. And it's interesting, Brett. You're just talking about the New Orleans offense and how much they run. And I want to hear your take. I want to hear you out because, look, results oriented. I've been absolutely wrong on this. And I feel like maybe you've been doing the same thing all year. But talk about the running backs there in New Orleans and how have you handled them actually throughout the season as well? I'm curious.
Yeah, I've been really bad. I'm right in that same boat with you. So Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. I mean, you have to pay elite price tags on these guys as if they're workhorse backs, which, I consider a workhorse back where you're not only carrying the ball, you're catching the ball, getting 20 touches. Kamara, in this same matchup, he saw 4 touches 2 weeks ago. Now, this is a spot where I do expect New Orleans to really get off. They're not going to have the same issues that they had in Atlanta.
Well, that was the game he got concussed in, though, right? Not to cut you off, but
yes, that's correct. But Ingram still didn't have a very good game in that game. So I think this is just a spot where opportunity cost, and I do like other running backs in better spots. Now, this game does stand out on an island with the over/under being kind of in a spot where no other game is anywhere near that. So it's just where I like Ezekiel Elliott more. I'd rather pay Le'Veon Bell if you got him in your slate, Kareem Hunt. So it's just opportunity cost of rostering one of these guys and not feeling confident which one's going to really have the game,
Yeah, like I think they're both really good, and I think Kamara is just insane. Like he's so talented. If you watch him, you can tell he's a clear difference maker on the field. But for me, like talent is not the most important thing. Like volume and opportunity. So tell me where these 29 points come from, Brett. Is Michael Thomas going to catch 2 touchdowns? The defense going to do something? Like it's just like hopefully neither one of them get like 2 touchdowns, and you could be okay. And then I think it was okay last week until I knew it was coming too. Like whenever the defense say like 10 guys, 11 guys in the box, they hand the ball to Ingram. He's just going to break past the first wave, and he's gone because it was essentially get a first down. The game's over, and then Ingram busts off like a 50-yard touchdown. It's like, well, so much for the Ingram fade. That was not fun. So where do the points come from?
Yeah, so it's funny. I mean, when the Saints offense is healthy, right, they have all their guys, they have all their studs. It can come from anywhere. And that's the issue. We see it also in New England when they're fully healthy, when they have the Grants and he's not suspended, and they have Cooks and they have Hogan, who is now practicing. It almost becomes there's just too many mouths to feed, and the target allocation is so great that you don't know where to go. That's exactly where we are with the Saints without any injuries. So I think I reserve only New Orleans Saints exposure in tournaments. So in the big baller or whatever you're playing for Yahoo tournaments, these guys are definitely viable, and you'll get them low owned just because of what I said. But this is not a spot where I'd be going in cash games at all.
What's your thought here, Dalton?
Well, I mean, it's tough to argue with their production. And Kamara was on his way to a big game. It seemed like that game when he left concussed with Atlanta. I think he had 3 catches, 25 yards on that first drive of the game. But I do get what Brett's saying as far as other guys similarly priced with Elliott, Hunt. I prefer them a little bit. And it is maddening because inevitably you'll pick the wrong Saints back, but could be a lot of points in this game and in that environment. I don't know. I could see them putting up big numbers, but I totally understand that it's just tough to predict which one any given week.
I would say if I'm going to pick one, I would probably take Kamara. Like Atlanta's really vulnerable to running backs too, catching the ball. They both can catch the ball, but Kamara just can really get loose. We saw Ingram get loose last week. I think like a 50-yard screen or something like that. But as far as the guy you're willing to fade, where are you at, Dalton?
Yeah, Leonard Fournette. I mean, he's banged up again and remains very expensive. $36, second highest price back, right there with Kamara. I mean, again, playing banged up. You never know if he could re-injure it in the middle of the game. The Niners have quietly, for all the Jimmy G talk, they've quietly improved defensively. Since their bye week 11, they've allowed 3.1 yards per carry, and I believe the fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs. And this is coming from a defense that was a sieve, the worst against running backs the first 5-6 weeks of the season. But Reuben Foster is healthy, developing into an elite run stopper. So I don't think the matchup is as good as it looks if you just look at the season-long stats. So no way at that price do I want any part of Fournette.
Yeah, I can't see that happening. I can't see myself paying for that. But let's talk about the receivers. Because I think that's the real interesting conversation. Yeah. You know, as the receivers there against San Fran, Bortles has looked – I mean, he's looked good. I know once we say something, we want to believe it's true forever and just not want to change our minds. Surely the defense is helping him out as well too, but he's certainly looked better this season. Marquise Lee expected out. A couple of receivers just basically coming out of nowhere as far as Cole. Jaden Mickens sleeping in his car, getting touchdowns. So Dalton, and then, I want to forgive D.D. Westbrook. I think he's the most talented guy, and I trust that he's still the best play amongst this bunch. What are your thoughts?
I really like them. Marquise Lee's out. I know Alan Hearns might return, but he admits he's not going to be 100% for the next few weeks. So I don't think that's a huge concern. I already said, I think the Niners defend the run pretty well. Their secondary, on the other hand, has some big question marks at those corners. So that price is $18 and $19. In my optimal lineup I put up on Yahoo, I actually featured both D.D. Westbrook and Keelan Cole. Yeah,
chime in here, Brett. How are you handling this? Because, and I guess you can sort of factor in the conversation of ownership and recency bias because D.D. Westbrook never again. He burned me last week. And, look at that. Look at Cole and look at Mickens. Are people going to chase this and ignore if they're playing a receiver for Jacksonville? Well, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so, D.D. Westbrook, I think, is the guy that will step into basically the Marquise Lee role here. Bigger wide receiver. I think he'll be more of the red zone threat too. Keelan Cole, he crushed it, obviously. A couple longer touchdown or one long touchdown there. I'm all on team D.D. Westbrook though. The talent was there. We saw it in college. Only question mark was just this guy's attitude. And, no Marquise Lee. We don't know exactly what the running back situation is going to look like with Fournette and Ivory and Yeldon. So if I'm going anywhere, and I will have plenty of exposure to Jacksonville this week. Anytime you play San Francisco, you get a boost in amount of plays. Not on Bortles as much because of the lack of Marquise Lee, but I think you can definitely buy D.D. Westbrook comfortably. I'd expect somewhere around 10 targets for D.D. this week.
And another nice thing about going with some Jacksonville receivers this week is if Garoppolo really is for real, he might be able to put some points against Jacksonville's defense. And usually the game script's so bad for their receivers because the defense is just dominating. But out there in San Francisco at home, who knows, Garoppolo maybe, could put up 20, 24 points, resulting in Jacksonville having to throw more than they like to.
There's this force field, though, with Garoppolo that they can't get in the end zone.
Yeah.
He can get you to the red zone. He's the best at that. And then all of a sudden, Robbie Gould does this thing. He's amazing.
Hey, he's winning games, baby. He's winning games.
Yeah, don't start the Jimmy FG nickname. Don't start that. Away. You just want to give Robbie Gould his revenge game and set some records. He's fine.
You mentioned Garoppolo and Yahoo. They definitely tempt you with the pricing based upon matchup sometimes. I don't want to pick on Jacksonville. I don't seek it out. But hey, he's $28. Are you intrigued to any extent here?
No, I'm a Jimmy G guy, and I used him last week in this lineup. But no, not with that matchup and so many quarterbacks. Just $3-4 more. I would pivot away from him this week.
So speaking of discounted players, and maybe he's actually appropriately priced now, but my hard pass is AJ Green is $27, which I think is still not cheap enough. I'm just not tempted. I think that Cincinnati team, the whole organization, is just a sieve, to use a word that was referenced earlier in the show. Just a disaster, as far as what Marvin Lewis and if he's retiring or stepping down or getting fired and they want to save face. whatever's going on there. They are hitting the sim button. They're trying to simulate the rest of the season. They do not care. Again, and he wasn't good last week. Of course, he was shut down by Rhodes, and now he's got another tough spot when facing Slay. I just don't trust the Cincinnati offense. Brett, you like the price shop? $27, name Green, $27. Okay, it's interesting. Again, only $2 cheaper than Michael Thomas. Like I can't have, of course you can play them both, I suppose. But for me, I just cannot see myself rostering AJ Green. It's just not cheap enough.
Yeah, the whole organization, man, I feel is giving up on the year. You have a coach that didn't even tell his own players that he was going to be stepping down. It had to come out via the media. So it's one of those things where I think everybody's packing up there. But I mean, if you're going to buy anything in Cincinnati, I do like Joe Mixon in tournaments. He's $21 on Yahoo. I don't think a lot of people will go there, but it looks like he's going to be ready to roll. He's been practicing now. So I think if there's a shot, like you want to go with a younger guy that really wants to, be the starter and be the guy in this offense going into next year. And I think they'll have plenty of plays for him now that he's practicing.
So that your idea is that they know what Bernard is. There's no reason to develop him, whatever it is. But just kind of see what you have in Mixon, kind of work towards next season, and maybe Mixon gets an 80-20 split or something in his favor.
Yeah, and he looked really gassed last week talking about Giovanni Bernard. So I think he sits back down into maybe a little bit of a third down back. And Mixon's showed that he can catch the ball. So I think he really takes over here. And I would only play this in a tournament setting where you're going to get this for low ownership. So
Dalton, you like Mixon this week?
Yeah, I agree that I'll probably be low ownership. So he's an interesting tournament play. People forgot about him. And I'm with you as far as AJ Green. Darius Slay's good. That whole team you got to worry about just in general. And he's I believe he's averaging the fewest yards per game since his rookie season. So his down year looks like it's going to end on a down note.
We're going to fire up the old hot take cannon. Dalton, you fire first.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm saying something too crazy or a hot take here, but I mean, Dion Lewis is a RB1 for me. I think I have him ranked 12th overall among all running backs this week, and he's not quite priced accordingly. I mean, he's going to step into that feature role without Burkhead. Yeah, there's always some risk of who knows. Maybe Gillislee will step back into the goal line role, but he's been out for so long. I think the touches will be there. He ranks number 3 in juke rate according to player profile this year. So I mean, he's been getting it done when given the opportunity. Obviously, they're the biggest. They're 12-point favorites. Buffalo's been getting killed against the run. So how is Dion Lewis not in the vast majority of DFS lineups this week?
So, well, it's because of the history of New England running backs and just right. They kind of troll you sometimes, and the potential of Gillislee. And me and Brett, we talked on a previous show earlier today, and I don't think you're a little bit concerned about the prospect of Gillislee swiping and siphoning a couple of his touchdowns at the goal line.
Yeah, I mean, in NFL, you're dealing with small sample sizes as is, but we've been here before. We've seen this before. New England's always had 2-3 running backs. Gillislee, what we know out of Gillislee is he was the red zone guy. He had 3 touchdowns in week 1. Now the question that you have to ask yourself, without Burkhead in this lineup, who eats what he used to do? I think Dion Lewis does take on more of the pass catching role, but I'm going with Gillislee being the goal line back. I mean, there's times where New England just gets right to the line, and whoever the running back is gets that touchdown. And I agree, Dion Lewis is going to see a high percentage of that snap count and will get that touch there. But if it's a timeout, if it's a called play, I see Gillislee getting those goal line carries. So I'm not going to be as heavy on him. And again, I think this is a part of a great offense. They're the highest implied team total this week. But I won't have too much exposure for the Patriots unless it's a tournament setting.
Would you play any Gillislee in tournaments, or is that just too ambitious?
I think that's pretty ambitious to go that far. I mean, you really have to really write a good story of how Gillislee's going to get there, and it is going to be pretty unbelievable. But week 1, he got 3 touchdowns, and I feel like that's his role. That's his short yardage, so third down and shorts, goal line. I mean, he's going to be used.
Here's the story. That's the story. Well, he didn't have a chance for his first revenge game because he didn't dress. Well, he dressed, I assume. He wasn't wearing a uniform, wasn't available to play. But maybe he's this week's Tommy Bohannon. he gets 2 1-yard touchdowns.
So for it to be a revenge game, right? Does this player specifically go up to the coach that's calling plays and go, "Hey, I used to play for Buffalo. Why don't you draw up some more plays for me so I can touch the ball?" And then like shove it in their face? Like, is that what we're expecting is going to happen here?
That's exactly how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, like, you say that, but I mean, I'll tell you this. Like, obviously, that's I understand your point there, but I will say, I assume, I have no idea. I'm not in the huddle, but I'm sure like all week long, like receivers are telling the quarterback, I want to burn these guys. Those are my former teammates. I used to go up against that guy in practice all the time, and like the quarterback even if it's subconsciously, like, I think that's somewhat of a thing. I think it's something. I wouldn't say it's nothing. I just don't know how much of it is, Brett. What do you think?
Dean, I would agree if he played all 16 games. But this guy's just happy to be on the field, all right?
Correct. I was taking it away from Gillislee, just kind of the idea. But
yeah, right. But no, I totally get it. Like in a sport like the NBA where you actually have the basketball in your hands and you can really enact revenge because – like you have the ball. Like I totally get it. But when other people are calling the play calls, I don't think you have much of a say.
Yeah, you can dictate your usage in basketball, not so much in football, unless you call an audible. But yeah, I think Peyton Manning spoke on this years ago about like he would kind of like the greasy wheel narrative. Like if a guy hasn't got it in like the last week or two, he would do his best to like defeat him.
He has the control. He has the control to do that.
Yeah, Manning, he gets to call the audibles and do it. Basically, he throws the ball. So, all right. As far as other hot takes, what do you have for me, Brett?
Yeah, so Mike Evans. So this week, I got him as my top wide receiver of the week overall. Just feel like this is a great spot. This is the time of the year. Actually, it doesn't matter what week it is. I love when we start seeing, not for the players that get hurt, but love it when extra injuries open up potential target usage and whatnot. And we're getting that in Tampa Bay. No O.J. Howard, so it's not like he gets a lot of targets anyway. He's more of a pass-blocking tight end. But you have Deshaun Jackson still supposedly with a boot, potentially on crutches, not practicing. I don't expect him to play. Really like Mike Evans this week to be fed a ton of targets. And kind of read an article before I came on the show that kind of makes the narrative a little bit better. You got Winston that says, talking to the media, you guys can shred me up for the whole year for not giving him that chance more often. Talking about Mike Evans, he goes, in this situation when Mike is one-on-one or no one is around him, I've got to give him a chance. Cool part about it too is Dirk Cutter kind of said the same thing. He goes, I've had the same exact conversation with James. It's a lot simpler when you just throw him the ball. So I expect this narrative and these quotes to be kind of put into the game plan more. At least Jameis, if nobody's open, throw it up to him. So Mike Evans, Mike Evans, injuries are favoring him here. And, this is a spot where you beat Carolina on the outside. James Bradbury and Darryl Worley, they've been susceptible all year on the outside. So they kind of stuffed the run, kind of already a funnel. No Doug Martin running the ball. So the pass run ratio has been really strong towards the pass for Tampa Bay without Doug Martin. And I expect that to continue, especially being down in this game. So.
A couple things. One, do you think how much one-on-one coverage is he going to get if Djax is not in the field? That's the thing. I assume he's going to get a fair amount of targets. He won't have a ton of efficiency because, the defense knows he's like the one guy, right, to be concerned with. So how much does that change things? Like Djax being out, more targets shuffled his way, presumably, but, not premium targets necessarily. How do you decipher between that? How do you figure that out?
Yeah, this has been an interesting year with quarterback play, right? I mean, we have quarterbacks that have been brutal. And I give Jameis a little bit more credit. He's not as efficient, but I still feel more comfortable with him than like Josh Gordon targets. This is just a spot where I feel like injuries really make Mike Evans the clear play. I can't see too many negative things happening here for Mike Evans. So just feels like a good spot to me.
My one other thought before we get Dalton's opinion is just when was the last time, theoretically, hypothetically, you swapped out Mike Evans at 12.50 and you regretted it? Like, when was the last time he had that game? Like, oh man, I wish I would have
That's
rostered
true.
Mike Evans.
Yeah.
Hasn't happened in like at least a year.
Right. And to speak more on the Tampa Bay wide receiver situation, I know Dean and I had a conversation about Godwin earlier in the year. And this guy is actually an athletic freak. We should expect to see him out there on 2 wide receiver sets. So it's not like there's, physicality wise or athleticness wise, a big drop down, I think, from Deshaun to Chris Godwin, just looking at their Spark scores and whatnot. So that's another $10 guy that's going to be interesting for Yahoo plays.
You're a Spark score truther?
I mean, you got to look at it, especially when you don't know too much about a guy. Hey, I want to know what he's running the 40 in. I want to know how well he did in college and things of that nature.
McKinnon and Kittles are 2 of the guys that I know those are like that's like on team. Those are like first stringers on a team Spark score. Dalton, what are your thoughts as far as Evans?
Yeah, I only like Spark score when it backs up players I like, but when it says otherwise, then I just ignore it altogether. But in seriousness, I made Cameron Brate my $10 baller, so I just like the setup. The Carolina's more beatable to wide receivers, but yeah, Tampa Bay can't run the ball. They should be playing from behind. 10-point dogs. A bunch of banged up other options other than Mike Evans, and obviously no O.J. Howard. So I'm with there with Evans, especially his price, 24, certainly lower than it was at the beginning of the year. And Cameron Brate, 14 touchdowns since the beginning of last season, and now the only tight end there. So I really like him at $11 this week.
Yeah, he seems to have a rapport with Winston as well, too. As far as my hot take, I don't know if it's a hot take or not, but, I mean, they looked terrible last week as far as Seattle. Russell Wilson, I have him going for 400 total yards and 3 touchdowns at Dallas. I know their playoff chances are slim, but they do have playoff chances, so they're going to be pushing and going for it. We saw last week, where coach did not take him out when they were down like 40-7 with like 5 minutes to go. And, I mean, it's great for your fantasy teams, all that, but it's completely not practical. And, like, my way of, like, making sense of that is, like, maybe, like, they were thinking about padding a potential MVP season, which, I mean, that was my reason. I don't know, although I think Brady's going to get the MVP because by default now it just kind of fell to him. He's in – what's the stat, Brett? He's been involved in every offensive touchdown this year but 1. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, probably one of the craziest stats you'll ever hear. 34 total touchdowns for Seattle, and 33 of them have come by way of Russell Wilson in one way or another. So, if you roster Russ, expect all the touchdowns.
Yeah, and I think that game's going to – I feel like that game's going to shoot out. What are your thoughts, Dalton, as far as Dallas versus Seattle?
Yeah, totally. It's time to buy him now, coming off a bad game. And you're right. That was crazy that he was playing at the end there, although I had him some places and I was happy to see it, but it was absurd. But I expect a full-on their defense is obviously shaky with injuries, and we expect a big game from Zeke, so good environment. So I expect a total shootout, and Russell Wilson obviously is involved in every single play there. He'll run. So, yeah, obviously Sean Lee, Dallas defense plays better, but still I expect a lot of points in this game. Wilson, he's ranked there. If he's not the number 1, he's the number 2 quarterback of the week.
We do have our $10 ballers, Dalton. You kind of referenced there as far as Cameron Brate. Is there anything else you wanted to say as far as selling? And, of course, Howard being out makes him more appealing. He's $11, and I'll give you a tight end, which, I mean, you probably can piece it together. It was $1 cheaper. But why are we on Brate as a potential pump? We kind of alluded it a couple times, but just to send it home, I guess. Yeah,
just to reiterate, 14 touchdowns since the beginning of last year. You said the rapport with Winston, no Howard. I just like the setup. There are a few alternatives. If you're going to go, you highlighted this earlier, but it's totally just worth hammering home. You either go big on tight end this week or totally cheap. It's one or the other. I wouldn't pay for the in-between.
So my cheap tight end, and maybe for the last time ever, like this is, if you missed out and never once rostered Antonio Gates, this is probably it, folks. Or maybe week 17, we shall see. Hunter Henry, of course, is out for the season. He's dealing with he's got a kidney, and he's just no minimum here. Gates, he's $10, 10 smackers. Great chemistry with Philip Rivers. Rivers loves him. Rivers would happily loan him one of his bolo ties. He would probably let him watch one of his 7 kids.
Yes.
And he's he's not going to do anything between the 20 so much. I mean, you're basically banking on him catching a touchdown. He's a great red zone target, and he's $10. Brett, I guess talk about we've had this conversation earlier today, and just let's talk about as far as Brate versus Gates. If you're fully punting, and we talked about paying all the way up, how about spending all the way down as far as tight ends?
See, I would love this situation a lot more if the Chargers weren't in the playoff race. Knowing that they are in the playoff race and they need to win, I don't expect much work still from Antonio Gates in between the 20s. Love Keenan Allen. I think Keenan Allen eats up a lot of that Hunter Henry target shares still. And then even Melvin Gordon gets probably a little bit more of the touchdown equity that Hunter Henry gives up. So if they weren't in the playoffs, I mean, I could see a career-defining, Hall of Fame career-defining moment here where they just go all in. So, if they lose Week 16 and they're out of the playoffs by Week 17, this could be a jam in Antonio Gates because Phillips just going to give him all the balls,
No, wait, hold on. First of all, we thought that was going to happen last year when he told everybody he was retiring. And I played him Week 17, and Narrative Street told me he was like one touchdown short of breaking the stupid record for tight ends or tying it, whatever it was. And I fell for it because, the quarterback dictates, and we talked about already narratives, and it didn't work. It didn't work out.
This would be like Kobe Bryant narrative maybe Week 17 if they lose and they have nothing to play for. I just see all the balls going his way. And then at $10, he's an awesome play. But Dalton, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, he's fine at 10, but I'd personally go Brait for $1 more. And I hear you. Yeah, they're gonna try to win. And Gates is just, there's no separation. Even if they want to try to feed him in between the 20s, good luck. But it would be a cool story if he hits Pater. But I think you're totally relying on a touchdown here.
I took a peek, by the way. Next week they're at home for their adoring fans there in Los Angeles at the soccer field. The Raiders versus the Chargers, and it'll be like 90% Raiders. I don't know, but like eight people in the crowd will be happy if Gates, has a small. I'm assuming he's leaving. I don't know, as he said. I'm not sure, but as for, it's DFS. All you care about is this week, and I think he's in play there as a full punt. And Brett, you got a cheap receiver for us.
Yeah, so Kendall Wright, I mean, basically since the Bears allowed Mitchell Trubisky to play the quarterback spot, like how we know, and not like the 1950s quarterback spot, he's actually throwing the ball and completing over 73% of his passes the last 3 weeks. So we were just talking about Mike Evans' targets not being so efficient. Well, Kendall Wright's been getting really efficient targets. He's had 24 targets, 17 catches for 188 yards. And at only $14, he allows you to buy up, some of the running back studs that we were talking about. So I think I'm going to be jamming him in. He's running all of his routes out of the slot. You have a Bears team that's kind of been without a tight end for most of the year. So I think that might have opened up more of the middle of the field for more targets for Kendall Wright. And he's going to be avoiding Jason McCourty coverage, on the outside. So that's always a good thing. And Cleveland, man, if you've rostered running backs versus Cleveland, you're a net loser this year. They've been stuffing the ball. They're the toughest against the run, even though they haven't won a game all year, which means they're facing the run all the time. This is a pass funnel defense. So the Bears are going to be passing the ball a ton. And this is just, this is a terrible game, but we don't mind it when both teams have nothing to play for, other than maybe Cleveland trying to get a win this season. So I think this is a spot where Kendall Wright gets fed.
All right, Dalton, what's your take here as far as Kendall Wright in this game? Like you said, a disaster. And I like how you said let Trubisky actually play quarterback. Yeah, the Bears have really set the position back for a couple of those games. It was like watching Army-Navy or something like that. But what's your take there, Dalton, as far as Wright? I remember week 1, it didn't work out well for me. Results-based anger.
Yeah, 24 targets over the last 2 weeks at that price. It's hard to argue against. Brett said that it's the funnel defense. The Browns defend the run well, and you can beat the receivers, can beat the secondary. So it's the right setup. So I like it here. Nearly 7-point favorites at home. Yeah, right at that price makes a lot of sense. And boy, you're right about that Browns run defense. I had Alex Collins plenty of places last week, and I expected slightly better numbers.
Anybody have a favorite correlation play this week? I assume a quarterback, a receiver, but work it however you want. Brett, you got one for me?
Yeah, I think you can go right back to the well. So I made money last week going with Jameis to Mike Evans. Like I talked about, the pass run ratio for Tampa Bay has been pretty high, or lean more towards the pass. No Doug Martin there. So I just feel like Jameis is going to be chucking the ball, and then you can even throw in Cameron Brate there. So put in Jameis, put in Brate, put in Mike Evans, and that should be the Tampa Bay offense.
Dalton, you got one for me?
Yeah, I mean, Breeze and Michael Thomas, I'd say is the obvious one, but I'll go a little deeper. I'll say Russell Wilson and Paul Richardson. Richardson has 7 or more targets in 4 of the last 5 games, coming off a real down game, but he still saw the 7+ targets. So I like him to score in a shootout. So I'll go a little off the path there and say Russell Wilson and Paul Richardson.
Going off the board here, so let's say Kerwin Williams doesn't play. Does anybody have any interest in a $10 DJ Foster or a $12 Elijah Penny? Penny the bruiser, Foster probably more the third down guy. Doesn't that sound like a no? I heard a gasp.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be going there, but kudos to you if you do.
I just wanted to mention Elijah Penny's spelling of his first name. It's amazing.
Right.
But that's it. We're going to step aside. That is basically your analysis for this week. Unless anybody else has a hot take for the road, we basically fired them all off, right, Dalton? We're good to go?
Good to go. Good luck, everyone. And Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to everybody.
Tell the people where you can find them on the interwebs there, Brett.
Where you can find me, I guess at KillaB2482 on Twitter. I don't really tweet too much. I need to get more of a presence on Twitter, I think. So that'll be my New Year's resolution, I guess.
There you go. How about yourself there, Dalton?
Yeah, I'm at Dalton Del Don, and sign up for Yahoo DFS.
Thank you for filling in for us this week. Brett, you filled in admirably. Thanks, Dalton, as always. I'm Dean. Thanks for watching. Good luck this week as far as Week 16. Happy holidays. We're out of here. Holler. Thank you.